Well, one of the most important things going on right now, Doug, is obviously the Internet of Things, but it's man's attempt to displace God as the center of their universe and create themselves in the image of what I believe the overriding force is the Lucifer factor. So what's important is that people understand this, that we are in a battle that's been unimagined by Christians before us and even most at this time in history. So, Dr. Lake, thanks for coming on, and let's just take it. I told Dr. Lake in an in an email, I said, let's hit the bottom line and work backwards, because I think, Doug, people are totally in the dark, especially Christians who are wanting to embrace transhumanism as believing that's God's will for us. Dr. Lake, take it if you will, sir.
I think one of the things that is really disturbing to me are many of the reports I'm getting with what they're planning with 5G, Internet of Things. What we don't understand is they have a lot of things that they have had in the background that has been developed for a long time. They're planning in the next 5 to 10 years to advance us technologically between 100 to 150 years. And that's unbelievable to me when you begin looking at the dangers of what they have planned. They keep on talking about the global brain. And some of the things that I'm seeing, Steve, is, even without 5G, and what 5G is about is going to be low-orbiting satellites. That there'll be thousands of them so that every square inch of planet Earth is covered with gigabit Internet connectivity. There will not be a place on the planet that you can go that you can escape from it. And they're planning on, when they're talking about the Internet of Things, they're literally bragging that within 5 years they're going to be able to embed artificial intelligence into your tennis shoes, and that your tennis shoes will have a higher IQ than you do. The mechanism for control is almost unfathomable. But one of the things that's concerning me, Steve, is simply the amount of information with the technology that we have today, just with smartphones, with us on the Internet. I read a report just yesterday that, they're not dealing with petabytes of information anymore, which is almost mind-boggling. They're having to deal with zettabytes of information, and it is so massive that they don't have the structure in place to keep all this stuff in the cloud, and they have retrofitted semis that are nothing more than a glorified hard drive that they can haul this information that they're collecting of all of our activities on the Internet and begin feeding it into the system to begin developing the AI that they're hoping one day will become the singularity or their own version of God.
Well, I think, too, Dr. Lake, it's their attempt at omniscience, and even with Director Comey, ex-director of the FBI, Comey, saying they even know your thoughts. I think that most Christians do not understand, and probably not only Christians, but the majority of people on the planet, how they're going to either basically be assimilated or destroyed. You want to deal with that whole thought, because there are discussions going on between Christian singularity people saying it's God's will versus those of us who are being Tom Horn, myself, you others who are writing against us, warning about this. We're kind of, if you will, the transhumanist worst nightmare. And explain to people, if you would, just exactly what that feels, especially the ability to create an ELF field around the user. It's the ultimate mind control. Extreme measures that can be taken.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I did in my first book, I show where Dr. Bigich was actually able to illustrate to those in NATO that he went to Radio Shack, gathered a few instruments together, was able to place them on a person's body and project thoughts directly into their minds. Then later on, when he was on a talk show, there was a researcher bragging that over television, over radio, over whatever mechanism, the Internet, that they had discovered a way of projecting information that would manifest like it was in the center of your brain. And he said it was like the voice of God, that it was irresistible. These are some of the things they're working on. Now, when you look at the Internet of Things, and one of the things, Steve, that really concerns me, they revealed the fact that they have been placing these chips in appliances and other things for the last 30 years.
Isn't it funny, Steve? And pardon the interruption here, but Steve, isn't it funny when you were reporting on this 20 years ago, people were laughing at you. Well, here it is.
Well,
folks.
again,
pipes and smoke it. I mean,
I think what Dr. Lake is saying, you know the old statement, Dr. Lake, we're toast. That may be truer than most people even recognize, because smart appliances have been monitoring us. But I think that what's critical, Doug, and for the listening audience, is to understand. He just made a statement. Dr. Lake made a statement. Your shoes will be embedded with artificial intelligence and have a higher IQ than you do. Now, what's important is to understand we're being assimilated into the Borg, and so the global mind is becoming more and more pressing, and we are literally losing our identity as human beings, and that's the devil's ultimate goal, is it not, Dr. Lake, to absolutely show people that he can provide a form of godhood apart from God's salvation or his offer of eternal life through Jesus Christ.
Oh, absolutely. To me, it's an oxymoron for someone to say that they're a Christian transhumanist, and it's simply because their churches have completely dismissed Genesis chapter 6 and have no idea what it's talking about. I believe that many of the technologies that they're developing today are a different form of something similar to what they had in the antediluvian era. There was something that happened there, and I think it goes even beyond the genetics, that there was something there that was so able to pollute the souls of men. The Bible reveals that their thoughts constantly were evil, that there was a mechanism of control that influenced every single human being on the planet except for Noah and his family. And I think this is the modern version of that techno-sorcery they had before the flood.
And I think, too, it's critical for people to understand that, you made this statement 100 to 150 years in advance. King Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. That which will be has already been. And the advances that were in the antediluvian societies, i.e. before the flood of Noah, and even before that, the angelic civilizations possess such a phenomenal knowledge, and that the secret, if you will, rulers of this present age under the tutorial leadership of their fallen angel progenitors are absolutely bringing this to pass at an accelerated rate. Would you explain, too, that, just obviously you're an educator, you write curriculum. What is the most striking, if you will, thing that even surprises you as an educator? I mean, we're going into this thing by we're hook, line, and sinker, are we not?
We are, and I'm concerned by the level of mind control that far exceeds what we saw with MK Ultra, the Monarch Project. That we have. Just look at the protests at Berkeley or whatever, that you have these young college students that simply because they saw somebody with a Trump T-shirt go into what appears to be an epileptic seizure, and you want to run over to them and begin casting out devils. There is such a level of mind control that they have done with the generation. They're not connecting to reality anymore. That there's something else that's pushing their buttons, and they're literally becoming what Saul Alinsky called useful idiots. And they're trying to absolutely destroy Western society to create a new matrix of understanding for humanity.
Well, and the new matrix is basically nothing more than ye shall be as gods. Now, Doug, I don't know if you got it. I sent you and I sent Dr. Lake, too, Kirlian photography of Wi-Fi. And what's interesting is we all have it. We're at 4G now, 3G, but at 5G. And what was interesting is that Kirlian photography, did you have a chance to look at that, Doug?
Yes, I did. Steve. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, in essence, imagine a rainbow of waves, like a net, a spider net, and they're swirling in different vortexes and vortices, and you're exposed to that. Well, Doug, instantly, and I think I told this to Dr. Lake too, it brought to my mind the dying CIA agent's testimony that I wrote in Xenogenesis about the reason chemtrailing is being done is to destroy the barriers that God created through the frequencies of light and to keep out basically the shadow men and we talk about basically the shadow government and everything else. I don't think people understand how true that is. So what I'm saying, imagine, and Dr. Lake, you read that years ago possibly, but the thing is that now I see with 5G, and I didn't even consider this until you sent me, your kind of take. I always ask people, I say, okay, I know what you've written, just like me, but what's on your heart? And this is really what's on Dr. Lake's heart. So Dr. Lake, seeing what you proposed with 5G and then seeing the Carillion, I'll pronounce it, Carillion, K-I-R-I-L-I-A-N photography, did it ring some bells instantly to you?
Oh, many bells. On several levels. Number one, I think they're trying to transmute the color spectrum that God has placed on planet Earth. One of the things I thought was really interesting was the testimony of Henry Gruver, that once you get outside of our atmosphere, there is a greater color spectrum. God has done something to our atmosphere to create only an 8-color spectrum, I believe, for the safety of humanity. And it connects to Dimension Zero and Tartarus and a lot of different things. And they're trying to do everything that they can, not only to maybe free those that have been limited by God, but at the same time, Steve, I think they're trying to alter the consciousness of humanity. There is our present state of consciousness and rationale that we have is actually connected to the resonance of the Earth. It's called the Schumann resonance, which is 7.83, which literally can represent the voice of God, if you will. And that when astronauts leave the atmosphere, they actually have to have a Schumann resonator both in the spacecraft and in their gear, or it'll either kill them if they don't have it, or they'll lose their minds. They understand that if they can change our ability to resonate with the Schumann resonance, it's going to change our consciousness. And I have wondered if what they're doing with 5G and all the things they're putting into place, they're prepping us. Maybe instead of 7.83 hertz, they would love to set us up for 6.66 hertz, which could literally be the tune the Antichrist walks through and the things that he's doing to bring humanity more into line with him to where they can't even hear the voice of God.